McMullen, I'm Jody McDonald, the Mac Birds 365 get together here on the JAKIB YouTube channel. All right, we got 200 and change of you guys streaming in. At least a handful of you hit that like button. Give us a little love if you'd be so kind. We'll show a little love to our first guest of the day. That would be Mike Gill. I'm trying to judge via my little screen here. Looks like he got some color down there in Clearwater. And
yeah,
enjoy your
great
time
weather
down in Florida.
Not great weather, Mike.
Wasn't great weather, man. I got the cold week.
Oh, that's how it goes.
Suck it up, big guy. Hey, if you're down in Florida watching the
better than being here,
it can only be so bad, right, Mike Gill?
Yeah, well, I'm not complaining. I'm not like, a man of my size isn't hitting the beach too often, but it would have been nice.
That makes us 3 for 3 here. Thank you very much for noting that.
I just, some of my favorite spots, like the Clearwater Bait House, for instance. It was too cold. You're with the ladies. Like the girlfriends don't want to go because they're cold. So you can't even sit outside and eat at the outside venues. It was too cold.
Yeah. Any Phillies news for us? Let's get that down.
I saw them play a couple times. I got to, a lot of them are at the WBC. And but the one guy
great at the World Baseball Classic. It was basically the Phillies.
I know. I saw somebody tweet something today, like the Phillies hit 348 as a bunch. The rest of the team hit 245 or something like that. Alec Boehm hit a home run the other day when I was there that almost cleared the tiki bar. I mean, this guy is starting to open some eyes about whether or not, we hear these football terms. We'll bring it back to football. He's the best shape of his life. He looks 10 pounds heavier. Boehm physically does look bigger, and the results are starting to be bigger as well.
World Baseball Classic, we finally got to see Ohtani and Mike Trout's in a big situation, if you want to count that as a big situation.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Trout let America down. That was a great Sealski line. I'm joking. But it was entertaining. I'm not sure, but anything that brings attention to baseball, I'm a fan of. So I think people enjoyed that this year.
I thought
the one night, I got to tell you, I'm heavy into the NCAA tournament. All right. I love it. I watch every single second of every game. And we're at this place, and they had 3 TVs, but they're all connected. So whenever is on that TV has to be on all 3. It's a brand new spot. They haven't quite figured out. We're watching one of the basketball games, and when that was over, they flipped over to one of the WBC games, which I'm a baseball guy, but I'm not heavily invested in the WBC. And I said, dude, you got to give me the basketball.
I'm the exact opposite, Mike. I used to love the NCAA tournament. Now I don't know what it is. I just don't care nearly as much. Maybe it's guys that don't stay around, so you don't get invested in certain teams. It's not the same to me. I don't know.
They're definitely. It's like the Duke North Carolina rivalry doesn't really feel the same because the kids aren't playing each other for 4 years anymore. It's a 1-year deal and then they're gone. It's like that whole battle of you beat me when I was a freshman and we got you 3 years later. That's all out the window. So those things are gone. But it's, I still love it. One of the reasons is I'm off of work. I'm down there having some cold ones and watching Phillies. I'm watching baseball.
Oh, it's still a great thing. In the one and done environment, you still have the great upsets. And we saw it obviously this year. All that stuff is still the same. It's still great when you see, a Cinderella, somebody like that. But yeah, I mean, when you had Patrick Ewing and Chris Mullen going at each other for 4 years. That's missing. Yeah. That's definitely missing.
Yeah, I blame Mike Gill for that one. If I move into a
stories
place
are great.
and they got one TV, they don't have more than one option on the TV. I've got an option. It's called going somewhere else. I'm up and out of there. They better have the best food on the face of the planet. Otherwise, if I'm going in and I'm contemplating watching sports while I eat, you're giving me a choice of one. No, see you later. Bye. Best luck.
That's a bad job. They got to fix that.
I know.
That's on you, buddy. You got to get up and leave that one. All right. You got up and left us last week. We haven't had you on since free agency kicked in. We're 9 days in. Eagles have lost a bunch of players. They've retained a bunch of players. They've added a couple of new players, nothing that's jumping off the page, kind of like guys who will be given a chance to even compete, make the team. How would you rate Howie Roseman's, now that the second season has started, his performance so far?
Somebody tweeted at me because I'm kind of a known Howie supporter and always have been. I've never been the guy who wants to get rid of Howie Roseman. And he said, how are you going to spin the support of Howie Roseman? I said, what has he done wrong? I mean, I think they've had, the whole Slay thing was happening when I left. And then 2 days later, he was gone. And then he was released, but he really wasn't released. And then he was back. I said, well, that's pretty interesting. And then the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson stuff. I mean, that story to me is kind of weird. I mean, they made him an offer, but then the agent tweets it out. I said, well, listen, he took a crap offer to go to and then his agent puts that out there. I just feel like the Eagles just didn't really want him back for whatever reason. They don't value that position. They replaced, I guess, who would Morrow replace? Probably White, right?
I would think. I mean, I would think Nakobe would play middle linebacker and Morrow would play weak side. Although ultimately, I still think they're going to add a body. I can't imagine they go into a season with those two guys at linebacker, but we'll see. I mean, long way to go. That's the thing about it's like people forget, Mike, last year. Howie says it all the time. Talent gathering season. They got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on August 30th. They got, Linval Joseph in November. Forget about James Bradberry was June. There's more time. There's more time to add pieces.
Right. There's more time, but they also, I didn't think they were going to come back with Bradberry and Slay. You got both your corners. And look, the guys that they let go, you have to hope that you drafted well. Many people last year, they came at the result of losing a starting player from the year before. Same with Hargrave out. You drafted Jordan Davis. You need more from Jordan Davis. All the fans who are now complaining were also the same people that were asking for more playing time from the guys who are now going to get more playing time. And I would imagine, right. And I would imagine, guys, as you just kind of hinted at, John, they'll find a guy who's on the last year of a deal and try to find the team that doesn't want to re-sign them and bring that. They've done it with Ronald Darby. They did it with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They find that guy seemingly every camp that, hey, he's at the last year of the deal. They don't want to re-sign him. We'll give you a 4th-round pick. They got, 5 5th-rounders next year? So
they got so many picks next year projected. They're going to get more.
That is the back of your mind when camp comes around and you need to figure out what position's still light. Well, we got 5 or 6 5th-round picks that, hey, let's look around who's at the end of a deal. Who can we kind of steal from somebody?
Yeah.
So
and then you got the ring shoppers. What if Bobby Wagner comes here and says, "Oh, I want to try to win a Super Bowl"? What if Adrian Amos comes here? Not a great player, but he's got a history with Sean Desai. All of a sudden, you have Wagner and Nakobe Dean and Adrian Amos and Reed Blankenship. Everybody's happy again, right? That's how quickly things can turn. Not saying that's going to happen, but I find it very hard to believe the Eagles are going to line up with Nicholas Morrow as a starting linebacker and Justin Evans as a starting safety. This is not going to happen. Can't tell you who it's going to be, but it's not going to be those guys. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Morrow is a guy who at least has a lot of starting experience, has had, he seems like a Kaiser White type of guy who was under the radar, undrafted free agent. I know White was a West Virginia guy. But Morrow's a guy that, as he got more playing time, produced with that playing time.
Well, the difference is, and I don't want to, you're right, he's by far the most experienced linebacker, but they want to get Nakobe on the field. So to me, that's why I say it's not going to be Nicholas Morrow, because Nakobe's going to be on the field for obvious reasons, ceiling, upside. You got to get it started. And I don't think they want to, I think they want a more accomplished, a more sort of, as I said, I mean, Bobby Wagner's a Hall of Fame player, so that's going way out there. But I think they need a more established presence to help Nakobe sort of grow.
Yeah.
That's my thought process there.
I think Bobby Wagner be a great fit. I think there are two chances of that happening: slim and none.
Got to play somewhere.
Slim just left the field. The one thing we found out about Bobby Wagner last year was he got paid. He left the Seahawks and he got paid. He got paid so much that the Rams said, "Yeah, we can't afford to keep you, even though you had a good year."
That's the point.
Bobby Wagner is a guy who always keeps an eye on he's not coming in for less than market value would be my stance on him. And I don't know that the Eagles are going to, at a position where we've seen them undervalue all along, all of a sudden go, oh, okay. Now
well, I agree with that part of it, but at some point as a veteran player, you hit that standard where you say, all right, I'll try to win another ring.
Or
I'll take $5 million.
Or you
I'm not
find
saying
out
they're going to pay for him. They're not.
Or you find out, like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson did, the value is no longer there, or it's not out there for you.
Exactly. And at some point, I don't know if Bobby's hit that point, but he played very well with the Rams, and they weren't willing to go forward. Now they're in a different stage. They fell apart as a whole, so there's no need to have a veteran linebacker. But you know, he's more likely to go to Seattle, go back to Seattle. I'm not saying it's likely, but I'm saying I think the Eagles want a more solidified presence at linebacker.
Well, speaking of Seattle, by the way, that's the one. If Rashad Penny can stay on the field for 10, 15 games, which is highly unlikely given that kid's a difference maker in the backfield. He is an excellent addition, but I have no faith that guy can stay healthy. He is just so
even with the Eagles seem to think, because that's been the theme, Mike. Every single one of their signings, well, there's been two themes, right? They're not going to pay guys because they want those compensatory picks. That's number one. So they're trying to unearth these hidden gems in all of them. Rashad Penny most notably, but all the other ones as well, including Morrow, who missed an entire season, Justin Evans, who missed 3 seasons.
3 years.
And who am I missing? Who's the fourth one?
Greedy Williams.
Greedy Williams has had injury issues. And I just met Greedy and I forgot him. He's had significant injury issues in 2 seasons. So that's been sort of a theme for the Eagles. Are they too confident in their ability to manage these guys with these significant injury histories?
Well, it's funny because you think about all these injuries and the guys that they're taking these shots on, and then you go through their drafting. I mean, they took Sidney Jones. They were the team that did it. Then they took Landon Dickerson, who many people thought should have been a top 15 player. He works out. Sidney Jones doesn't, obviously. So I think the Eagles are going to continue to go down that road, and they've done it in times in the past, too, where they bring in the guy who has had the injury history. And you're hoping – the problem is you're hoping a lot of these guys – I don't know about that. I mean, Greedy Williams, he's not going to be a guy – I mean, unless somebody in front of him got hurt and had to play a lot of snaps. Penny would be the one guy, I guess, they're hoping of this group. If you could say, hey, of all the guys in this group, which one's going to be the one that hits, he would hopefully be the one.
Let me tie a couple of things together. You just mentioned a name, Mike, so it pushed me toward bringing this up. John asked, do the Eagles believe too much, rely too much on their own ability to get an injured guy on the field more often because they're that good handling the injuries? Well, they surely were this year. You got to give them at least that much credit. Here's, I think, a bigger worry, Mike. We all seem to believe that if you ask an offensive lineman to change a position, all you have to do is enroll him in Stoutland University, have the professor wave his magic wand, and the guy just miraculously changes positions and plays at the same exact level at the position he's paid for his entire life, because that happened last year with Dickerson. I could remind everyone that they tried to do that with Andre Dillard, moving him from left side to right side, and it didn't work out real well. So it's not Jeff Stoutland's not batting 1,000 here that he just automatically puts a guy in the next position and he's as good as he was. And oh, by the way, they always continue to tell us, well, we've cross-trained him at that other position. When? They don't practice. They don't put on pads. They protect them. You can't have both. We protect them so they never get hurt with injuries. Oh, but we cross-train the snot out of them, and that's why they're ready to change positions. I just get maybe it's me that we put too much belief in, well, because Jeff Stoutland says so, a positional change will be no issue whatsoever for this player. Are we just penciling in Juergens as their right tackle? Go, oh, he'll be as good, if not better, than Isaac Seumalo. Is that a bit of a reach or a stretch?
I agree with what you're saying. And I've never played offensive line before. Believe it or not, I was a running back. So the concept of what's going on up front
was a while ago, huh, big guy?
It was a little while ago, yeah. I had Trey Thomas on the show, and we were talking. I can't remember who we were discussing making the switch of sides, but he was saying, look, the footwork's all different. Everything is different. It's not just snap your fingers and you're going to play left tackle, then go to right tackle, and it's all going to work out for you. Man, I wish I remember who we were talking about that was making
probably
that
Dillard. Was probably Dillard.
Could have been Dillard. But
might have been Jordan. I mean, Jordan has that obviously great personality. He described it as, hey, go to the bathroom and try wiping with the other hand. It's not that easy.
Yeah, I remember, and I know that people will snicker at this name, but years ago I hosted a show with Danny Watkins, okay? And he was playing left. I think he was playing right guard. He was playing right guard, and he played left tackle in college, and the guy had very little experience to begin with. Yeah. He said he told me the Eagles were the only team that looked at him as a guard. He was getting looked at tackle by most of the other teams. And he said, I never really played guard before. And he went from left tackle to right guard. And obviously he was a disaster, or maybe he played left guard, but just the positional switch. Now, obviously it's mock draft season. I've seen some mock drafts giving the Eagles an offensive lineman at that 10th pick there. Would you guys be pretty surprised? Peter Skronsky from Northwestern, by the way, who by the way played tackle in college, and now you're going to have to say, hey, because there's some thoughts that they could replace Isaac like that. You mentioned Juergens, who they drafted last year, so there's some options there. But would you guys be surprised if they took an offensive lineman at 10?
Never. I'm never surprised when they take an offensive lineman. Literally never. Lane has said, he's probably got 2 more years. So they're going to start thinking, and because you bring up Skronsky, they might take Skronsky to replace Lane, to be the heir apparent to Lane, and start him out inside and kick him outside. It's so ironic how this started. Lane Johnson was the heir apparent to Jason Peters. And then Jason Peters never left, and they moved him to right tackle. And you remember, Mike, every year it was like, well, you're going to move Lane to left tackle when Jason finally does leave. And yes, right up until it was no, he's so good at right tackle, we're not going to move him. Now we have Landon Dickerson. People forget when Isaac was drafted, he was the heir apparent to Jason Kelce. The Eagles thought that his eventual best position would be center because he's so smart, and he is, football IQ. And Stoutland always talks, he's got 2 guys that know what's going on at all times when it comes to the offensive line, which is a big deal. And all of a sudden they had to move him, and one of the things they like about Isaac is he can play anywhere. He can literally play all 5 positions and play them at an acceptable level. Which is really, really difficult. And then came Dickerson, who was drafted to replace Kelce. And then he had to play guard. Now he's so good at left guard, we're not moving him. And you bring up, they might draft Skronsky. He might have to play right guard early in his career. And they're saying, well, then we'll kick him out. And he might be so good, they don't move him. And they draft another right tackle. So that's just what the Eagles do.
I was going to say, Jody, to retort to you on that, they do have many examples of guys who they have moved positions and said, this is where you were slated. Well, we need you here. And it has worked. I mean, even a guy like Driscoll, who's just like a fill-in guy, he's played both guards, he's played tackle. I mean, so they have had a couple of examples of guys who have been able to make the moves and, as John chronicled, make them change their mind on what position they penciled them in. You're right. Sayamala was supposed to be the center 5-6 years ago. You're a left guard. Well, last year he played left guard. Now you're the right guard. He's even some tackle, as you mentioned. So I guess it's been working out for them.
Yeah, it's all Jason Kelsey's fault. Why the hell does he continue to play like the best center in football? He's forcing the Eagles to move these guys all over the offensive line. I'll go one further with you. If I were just speculating, I don't know this to be the case. Maybe John McMullen does. Would you think that perchance Jeff Stoutland would be in Columbus, Ohio today? Because today is Ohio State's pro day. And I'll tell you that Paris Johnson is the best tackle in this draft, better than Skoronski. Maybe not as versatile as Skoronski, who people are just plugging in as a guard to go back out to tackle. And Johnson's always been a tackle. No, the Eagles like him. They brought him in for a visit. And today is Ohio State's pro day. Howie Roseman going to the offensive line with the 10th pick of the draft. Who'd be shocked by that? Asked no one. Do you think you got Stoutland in Columbus today to keep an eye on an offensive lineman during his pro day?
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the Eagles do their due diligence on everybody. They're very good with that. A lot of that has to do with travel schedules and where guys are looking. But yeah, I mean, he's in the mix.
If you're gonna make somebody the 10th pick in the draft, don't you need Stoutland at his pro day?
Yes and no. I mean, they might bring him in for a visit. So,
I think they already have. So this is their last chance.
They might go about things. There's a lot of with the draft. There's a lot of clandestine. You don't want to acknowledge your interest in players. There's a lot of nonsense that goes on with the draft, Jody. It's not just but it wouldn't surprise me if he's there.
I would keep in mind as well.
I wouldn't read into it either way, is my point.
Well, and keep in mind, I don't know if you guys hit on this last week when the trade happened, but the Bears are now in front of you at 9. I would imagine an offensive lineman will almost be 1,000% in that spot. I mean, I can't imagine.
They need defensive linemen as well. So the Bears need.
Well, if you're going to have if you're going to but if you're going to make the commitment that they finally did to this quarterback, don't you? That line is horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get them somebody to block up front.
Yeah, they need so much. They need weapons. They need, they could go a lot of different ways. And they don't make, Jody and I have been talking about this for a week because I'm not a fan of the Bears regime. They have no personality. Like the Eagles, we know have a personality, right? We're just talking about offensive, defensive line. They're going to default to that. They have this sort of foundation they're built on, and they don't really waver from it. The Bears, I can't tell you what they're going to do. I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just a wild card.
Here's the one thing I'll tell you about the Bears. If people are going to get ticked off the Bears at draft day because they're going 9 and the Eagles going 10, it's going to be because Carter falls down to number 9 because of the off-field issue stuff. And if he does, I can tell you right now, the Bears are taking him at 9. If the Eagles want Carter, they're going to have to move up from 10. He's not going to fall into their laps at number 10.
What did he get? 1 year probation and $1,000 fine. Was that the ruling? So I would imagine that wouldn't affect his draft status, right? Unless people deem that he's some.
Yeah, and then look, if he's not getting a 9, never mind 10. If people say, all right, that's it. Close the book. He's fine. I mean, the bigger question, there's a lot of teams that will take him off the board. There's a lot of teams that'll say, he's immature. And you don't know who those teams are. If he starts falling to 9 or 10, that's the question. I don't know who the Dom DeSandro is of Chicago, but that's who's got to do all the research into the kid and where he is. But from a football perspective, Jody's right. I mean, that's a team that needs talent.
Absolutely.
Well, they could
and he's the
absolutely
most
use
talented
the defensive line stud.
He's the most talented player in the draft, and they need multiple defensive linemen. So, but he might not be on their board. They might take him off as well. And the Eagles might take him off.
I would think, I mean, outside, if you were waiting to see what the punishment was going to be, and there was some talk he could have done some jail time. I mean, it would, depending on, but it seems that he got off. I don't want to say off, but I mean, he got a probation. And if teams think he's too immature, I think would be the question now, as opposed to we're worried about what the punishment will be. And I agree, Jody, with you. If he's on the board at 9, there'd be a Mick Foley versus Undertaker Hell in a Cell match to go get him.
And the Bears have already traded down once, and maybe they would think to do so again if they've got background information that says this guy is issues waiting to happen going forward. But I don't think they'll pass on it. They're in the talent building mode now rather than the talent takedown mode that they were going into the season. So I think the Bears will call out his name if he's sitting there at number 9. All right, Mike, nowhere still 5 weeks away from the draft, and you, me, John, all have to do continued more homework. But I'm hoping you have an answer to this question. Who's that day 2, more like day 3 wide receiver who's the best blocking wide receiver in the National Football League? Because the Eagles have this massive hole on their team now that Zach Pascal is left, that they have to have a blocking wide receiver. Who is that guy they're going to snack up in the 4th round? Oh, shoot, they don't have a 4th round pick. 5th round. Oh, shoot, they don't have a 5th round pick. 6th. Oh, shoot, they don't have. So I guess it's the 7th round where they find the new best blocking wide receiver in the National Football League to replace Zach Pascal. You got a name for me?
They could have brought Mac Hollins back. Didn't he just sign a deal somewhere?
Atlanta, I think.
Hollins actually became a receiver after he left the Eagles.
What's his name? What's his name? The Stanford kid is got he's got to be somewhere unsigned, right? You want to block
JJ? Yeah. Well, you got to be able to play. You got to be able to play snaps. So
well, and listen, we just spent a couple minutes giving an expository on the 10th pick in the draft. There's a high possibility they're not in that 10th spot or the 30th spot so that they can replenish many of the picks you just talked about them not having or adding, a player, hey, you want the 30th pick. So there's going to be teams behind them that want that 5th year and would give them, spots to get back in the 2nd and throw a 3rd in so that they can get that mid-round stuff. So I wouldn't think they're even going to pick 10 and 30, but we got 5 weeks. It's fun to talk about. But
yeah, well, that's what, and Jody, a little tongue in cheek from Jody there, because I said it's a nice luxury to have. They're not going to find
JJ Arcega-Whiteside, by the way. I couldn't think of his name.
JJ.
Yeah, JJ.
They're not going to find a blocker like Zach Pascal. So you're going to see what the offense looks without that luxury playing 400 snaps or whatever, because there is no kid in college. Maybe 5 years down the road, somebody can develop. Remember, because JJ, as you bring up, he could do it, but he couldn't play. He couldn't get on the field. He made too many mistakes. So he wasn't playing 400 snaps what Zach Pascal played. So it's a luxury, but it's one that you might notice at times next season. We'll see how that shakes out. At Mike Gill Show on Twitter, back in the saddle again down at ESPN South Jersey, the Sports Bash 2-6. We haven't talked about CJ Gardner-Johnson that much, Mike. I'll end it there with you. Boy, that was a crazy story. I think everybody in this outside buildings in this league got that evaluation, not valuation wrong. We all thought, well, CJ's getting $10 million a year, bare minimum. People were talking about the franchise tag, which is $14.46 million.
Right.
At safety, he got nothing. But that's not only the Eagles, that's 31 other teams. CJ got to look in the mirror a little bit and not be so upset, not tweeting and deleting all the time.
Well, and that's the thing. Is it that they are valuing the player as less than market value, or are they saying, hey, we're not sure that we can trust this guy to give him that 14 million?
Combination. I think
Correct.
It's a combination.
So the combination comes into play, and most of these teams say that's a position that we don't want to put a lot of money into. And if you're not that A1 superstar guy and you're on Twitter tweeting, deleting, and I guess there's this who was the safe Roman Harper, he came out and said, well, one of the problems New Orleans had with him was they couldn't really trust him off the field. And that's why they didn't want to bring him back. So that gets around the league. And, so yeah. And then, the whole tweeting, deleting, you hate me, this and that. I mean, it was like a bizarre situation watching this thing unfold. And then the whole thing, John, I defer to you on this one. I have never seen an agent come out and say, these are the two deals we got. Which one would you go with?
Well, I talked about that, but I don't know why they put that out there, but that contract, and I had somebody explain to me it was probably the cap numbers more than the actual contract, which makes some sense. But I don't know why the agency would put that out. Kevin Connor's his agent, who's been an agent for 22 years. I mean, he's not, it's not his first trip around the block. He understands contracts. I've never seen the Eagles structure a contract like that. So I don't know what to believe. To be honest, I think that was misinformation. Maybe it was an intern at the company. I don't think it was real because I've never seen the Eagles structure a contract like that.
Right. And the backlash from former players, saying I'd fired my agent if that was him immediately, didn't do CJ any favors either. And the way, that thing unfolded, I was in Clearwater, which of course there's a lot of Philly people there. When that was all happening, you would have a full bar of people going back and forth about this thing in Florida. It was like, did you guys all see this, CJ?
By the way, I don't know if you know, Mike, but Justin Evans, the safety, the Eagles signed the next day. His agent is Kevin Connor.
Right. Same agent, right? Yeah.
As CJ Gardner-Johnson. So
weird.
Yeah.
All right. Last one.
I'll say this. He got a 1-year, $8 million deal.
6.5, really. He can make up to 8.
Correct. With the hopes then, I guess, to get himself back on the market. The problem is he's going to have to do what he did last year to show that I'm a consistent player, because last year was his outlier season in terms of the interceptions. And I'm sure that's the number that they're throwing. Hey, this guy led the league in interceptions and he missed 5 weeks. Well, let me see you do it again and then we'll pay you. And that's going to be the issue.
I would say CJ should put Twitter down in free agency next year. Maybe Elon Musk runs it into the ground and he'll do him a solid. He's got to put that, people forget the Gannon stuff when he threw Gannon under the bus after Jeffrey Lurie. Remember, Jeffrey Lurie was going to pay him more to be the Eagles defensive coordinator than Arizona was going to pay him to be a head coach. And all of a sudden he's throwing the guy under the bus. The Eagles did not like that. They did not like that.
Let me answer a quick question on that Gannon thing. What he said with that, are we just assuming they were going to pay him more than Arizona was? Or was he saying they were going to pay me more than what most head coaches get?
He said more than most head coaches. So it's
Arizona may have paid him more money,
but
the Eagles were saying, we'll pay you like a head coach, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I would bet that Bidwell is paying him less than Jeffrey Lurie would have paid him.
Right.
That would be my
the
guess.
Cardinals have been a notoriously underpaid organization. All right, last one for me, Mike.
Yeah.
And this one won't go over well with Eagle fans. I would say since the day they played their last game, the Philadelphia Eagles' last roster as compared to their roster today, not as good. Now, we still have a lot of time to go, and the Eagles do have 2 first-round draft picks, so there's a lot of ways that the Eagles can upgrade their roster. But if you ask me to compare the two, what they finished the season, where they are today, I would say slightly less. I would say the Dallas Cowboys are slightly better with the additions of Gilmore and Cooks at wide receiver. the Cowboys have cut the distance between themselves and Eagles. CJ Gardner-Johnson may like to tell us he thinks the Lions have a more talented roster than the Birds. He's sucking up to the new team and their fan base. Okay, we get you, CJ. Don't think you're right, but we get you. But would you say that the Cowboys have closed the gap between themselves and the Eagles?
1,000%. There's no question about it. I mean, I think the Eagles, certainly your comment is right, Jody. I mean, they're not where they were at this point last year. Now, that's taking out the progression of their own players, guys like Dean and Davis, who didn't play as much last year, might have to ask them to play more. Unfinished roster, but they're certainly not the same team that left that field. New coaching staff, wildly new coaching staff in Philadelphia. Dallas, while we snicker, that McCarthy's going to be the play caller now. And
I'm snickering out loud.
Yes. But they haven't had this mass exodus of guys leaving. They've got continuity in Dallas right now, which is something that, the Eagles kind of were lauding last year. We got the same play caller for the first. Now, I know McCarthy's a completely different play caller. So, but I think Dallas is certainly, the Cooks deal. Now, the problem with Cooks is he's been on 9 different teams. He's learning 10 different offenses. He's here, there, everywhere. I think the name, it sounds like it's an upgrade. We'll see how they integrate him. But yeah, I think, look, Dallas, I think the gap was pretty small last year, right? It wasn't this wide gap between the two teams.
No, you're both getting Eagles fans upset now.
Yeah, sorry,
but you're right. You're right. You're both right.
Well, where I disagree with Mike, I think they're going to miss Kellen Moore. That's the only major change on the Dallas staff, but I think it was a change for the worse, certainly with McCarthy taking over the play calling. That isn't the reason why I think the Cowboys have closed the gap. I think it's more player acquisition, not coaching continuity.
Oh, no, yeah, I agree. I'm just saying that the Eagles, they took a hit with the coaching. We have no idea what they're going to look like, and that's a big change for Philadelphia. They lost both coordinators and some, in addition to taking some hits in free agency. Dallas kind of kept some continuity and hasn't taken the hit, and they've had it. To me, the gap wasn't all that wide, so it wasn't like Dallas had to come from far behind. It's not like the Atlanta Braves Mr. Freeze-It race where the guy's got to come and catch you by this month. This race was pretty close when they started here, and Dallas has kind of steadied the ship. And by the way, keep in mind, I think New York and Washington, I think they're getting closer as well. They keep kind of picking away at you. They might not pass you, but all 4 of these teams are moving in the better direction than you had years where the Giants were so bad and Washington was so bad that they were not even a factor. And this is when Philadelphia was just a mediocre, roster. Those teams are ascending. They're not descending. They have been descending for a while. They're both getting better as well.
Totally agree with you on the Giants. Not so much Washington. Jacoby Brissett's going to beat the Eagles next year. I don't think so. Mike Gill, it's good to get you back on the show. Sorry you didn't get better weather. You learned a lesson when you were down there. Don't go into a bar that's only got one sporting game on, and they might not put the one you want on. So make sure you have options when you're watching TV, when you're out with the missus. Appreciate you jumping in with us today. We'll talk to you next week. You got it, bud?
I'll be back.
That is
Thanks,
Mike Gill. 10 the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN down the shore, a frequent contributor. Yeah, he needed a week off to go down to Clearwater last week. We certainly don't begrudge him that, but it's good to get Mike Gill back in the mix. Good to get Bo Wolf in the mix. We haven't had Bo on and shoot, I think, over a month, as a matter of fact. Always entertaining, always good when he jumps aboard. He's going to join us here on Birds 365, coming up in less than 20 minutes now.